So, the leaks for Chapter 6 are out, which means it's time for us to break down another incredible installment in the world of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. And just like with every chapter that's come out in the last year of the Boruto universe, this chapter is also some heat. See, this chapter doesn't necessarily go as crazy as the previous 5 chapters. That is an incredibly high bar, because not only in this chapter is my theory about Shikamaru not being fully affected by the brainwashing completely confirmed, but we also get the reveal of Mitsuki's Sage Mode post-time skip, and finally begin to get a grasp of just how powerful he's become in the last 3 years. But somehow, maybe more importantly than even that, while battling against Mitsuki's, Boruto's ninjutsu choice to counteract Mitsuki's chakra snakes might have revealed what Kakashi has been up to for the last 3 years. And the answer is most definitely not working for the village. So even though this chapter may not be as crazy as chapter 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1, there is still a ton to talk about in these 40 pages, which means that we should get right along into it, because today we're talking chapter 6 of 2 Blue Vortex. But before we get to talking about anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you love the idea of me breaking down the most recent chapters of your favorite mangas, then you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where I talk all other anime besides Naruto and Boruto. Or if you just love the idea of me talking about anime and manga, then you're gonna love my anime podcast, Who Talks Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And just because I know people are gonna ask, hey Nick, what's going on with all the bandages? Let's just say, when you try to get between 2 dogs that are fighting to kill each other, you're gonna get bit. But everyone's fine. I'm fine. The dogs are fine. I'm tired. I'm fine. Might have rabies. I'm fine. But speaking of water, you guys hate it too, right? No? Just me? All right, cool. So I have an hour to finish this video until I'm dead, which means we should get to work. Chapter 6 starts in pretty much the worst way that any chapter of a Naruto universe story can start. And that is by reminding us that Hamura and Koharu are still alive. Now, for those of you who don't know every single name in the entirety of Naruto, Hamura and Koharu are the village elders of Konoha. The bald dude with the beard and the world's oldest woman. And somehow these two characters, who should be in their 90s, are still advising the Hokage. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, the Naruto universe is just like America. Gerontocracy, a country run by people too old to have any legitimately well-founded opinions about the future of the country that they're governing. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, the two people advising the literal leader of the village were on Hiruzen's shinobi team. Hiruzen, the man who was in his early 70s in Naruto. And yet, here they are, holding a position of political power at least 25 years later. Probably closer to 20 years later, but still. And it's not like either of them were ever astounding ninja. Sure, Hamura was present on the night that Kurama rampaged across Konoha, and maybe, possibly did something. That is the only possible ninja feat that we have from either of them. Why are we listening to them? Let's not forget that they sat side by side with Danzo for like 60 years, and we're like, oh yeah, this guy, good opinions. You should get canceled by proxy just for working side by side with Danzo. I don't care about the Epstein flight logs, I care about the Danzo flight logs. I actually do care about the Epstein flight logs, and you should too. And yet, even though these two should be nowhere near a governing body, here Shikamaru is reporting to them what's happening in the village. More specifically, Shikamaru is reporting to them that Boruto has returned to the village. But Boruto's return is somewhat mysterious, because Boruto showed up to battle against Code. And therefore, even though Konoha and the Land of Fire at large believe Boruto to be a traitor, Shikamaru's asking them to consider why Boruto would battle against Code and save Konoha. And surprise, surprise, the Big Bang and the first microbes sitting in their chairs decide, nah, just because he saved Konoha doesn't mean we shouldn't stop trying to kill him. Just saving the village one time isn't enough to get rid of a death sentence. I mean, sure, if hypothetically Boruto wasn't there, the entirety of Konoha would have turned into trees through claw grind bites, and then those trees would have later manifested an entire army of Shinju that would go on to be the most powerful force of beings ever assembled, as even the weakest amongst the claw grinds have the ability to battle against Boruto, inarguably the strongest person in the universe. But whatever with all that, let's kill him. Now, after the two original life beings decide to make another absolutely awful political decision, it's revealed through the conversation between Shikamaru and the elders that when Shikamaru took over as Hokage, and I'll explain why I'm putting Hokage in quotation marks, he said that he would only do so for 3 years. That is to say that he only wanted to be the Hokage temporarily, which would explain why his face isn't on the stone wall, which is actually something that we made a video trying to answer a couple weeks ago. Now, in that video, the real reason we said that Shikamaru doesn't have his face on the stone wall is because Shikamaru has a hunch that Naruto is still alive. Otherwise, why would Shikamaru want to rule as Hokage temporarily? Now, Now, one can make the argument that Shikamaru believed that somebody else more suited for the Hokage would be able to step up in those 3 years, but genuinely, where would Shikamaru look? Somebody could say that he's keeping the seat warm for somebody like Konohamaru, but I think it's a much more compelling plot reason to say that the reason that Shikamaru wanted to be the Hokage temporarily is because he knew either subconsciously or consciously that at some point or another, Naruto was coming back. Shikamaru then returns to the Hokage's office and connects with Ino telepathically, using her mind transmission jutsu. Now, the reason that Shikamaru does this is because really the only way to evade the detection of Ada is to use mind transmission jutsu. See, because while Ada can see everything that's going on Earth, she can't hear inside of people's brains. And thus Shikamaru tells Ino that he needs to have a private conversation with her, one that will not be logged by the detection corps, which is a part of Konoha's defense strategy that Ino runs. But Shikamaru, while having this private conversation with Ino, states that there's 3 people he doesn't want to hear the conversation. And those 3 people are Amado, Ada, and Kawaki. Now, Shikamaru not wanting Amado or Ada to hear their conversations makes perfect sense. Even if Shikamaru's memories were swapped, Ada and Amado would always be suspicious characters. Their roles wouldn't change, and therefore Shikamaru still wouldn't trust them. But Kawaki is the interesting addition here. See, if hypothetically Shikamaru's memories were perfectly altered, he would have no reason outside of what he heard from Amado in Chapter 5 to be suspicious of Kawaki. Even if you take the realization that Amado had in Chapter 5 that Shikamaru observed through spy cameras into consideration, all Amado says is that he acknowledged the fact that he believes his memories have been altered, but he doesn't say that that has anything to do with Kawaki. He just says that he knows he was the person who created and augmented Kawaki's karma marking, but that he has no memory of it. That in itself is not incriminating of Kawaki. It's just that Amado is using Kawaki as a starting point for the thesis that his memories have been altered. So Shikamaru showing distrust of Kawaki means that he's distrusting his own memories. We then cut to Ada and Kawaki, who are talking about the Shinju. And Ada's essentially telling Kawaki that the goal of the Shinju is to capture the Otsutsuki and Naruto. And her, but they kind of blow past that point. Now, naturally, because the Shinju are trying to capture the one person that Kawaki loves more than anything on Earth, Naruto, this conversation upsets Kawaki. But Kawaki says that the Shinju will have no chance of getting Naruto because the 7th is in his pocket. And that is to say that because Naruto is in the Daikoku-ten, there's no way that the Shinju will be able to get to it. But while they're having this conversation, Daemon chips in and points out that even though Kawaki has Naruto somewhere that nobody else will ever be able to access, a bunch of monsters coming to Konoha looking for Naruto would expose the lie that Kawaki has told the entire world. And that lie is that Naruto is dead. And therefore, while Naruto himself is perfectly sealed and hidden, the lie concealing Naruto's disappearance is not perfectly hidden. And that either aggravates or motivates Kawaki, who's decided he's had enough of this dinner and stands up to show off the incredibly drippy outfit he's wearing. I mean, it's an all-time outfit. I would literally wear it tomorrow. I'm actually thinking about trying to shop the 2 Blue Vortex character outfits because I want to be able to at least emulate Mitsuki, Boruto, and Kawaki. But when Kawaki leaves what I can only assume to be Ada and Daemon's house, Mitsuki is waiting outside for him. And while Boruto would be excited to see Mitsuki, Kawaki definitely isn't. In fact, Kawaki goes so far as to call Mitsuki a sheepish follower, even though Mitsuki says that the only reason that he's there is because he was assigned by the Hokage to survey Kawaki and Ada. And this chapter is really the first time that we've spent any significant amount of time with Mitsuki, at least in 2 Blue Vortex. And seeing firsthand how Kawaki treats Mitsuki makes it pretty easy to understand how Mitsuki is darkening as a character. See, if you subscribe to the theory that the new Team 7 are supposed to be representatives of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan, with Mitsuki being the Asaka no Magatama, and you understand that the 3 imperial regalia of Japan are meant to represent the 3 core values of the Japanese citizens, wisdom, valor, and benevolence, you'll know that Mitsuki is technically supposed to embody benevolence, which is essentially, in laypeople terms, kindness. However, now that Mitsuki's son has become Kawaki as opposed to Boruto, it appears as though he is anything but kind. He's ruthless, he's bloodthirsty, he's desperate for revenge, and that's what makes his character arc in 2 Blue Vortex so compelling. After we see Mitsuki and Kawaki link up, we cut back to Boruto, for the first time this chapter, and Boruto is sitting in relative silence with Sarada and Sumire, and Sarada's freaking out over the fact that she hugged him. Sumire then kicks up the conversation and says that it's good to see that Boruto is looking so good after these 3 years, to which Boruto responds, "Yeah, you're looking good too. And you as well, Sarada. I was surprised to see that you hugged me." The conversation then evolves into something more complex than building out Boruto and Sarada's future relationship, as Boruto reveals to the 2 women he's sitting with that the reason that he returned to the village, even though it's incredibly dangerous, was to tell Sarada that Sasuke has been absorbed into a tree. However, this is somewhat odd timing, because as we learned in quite literally the last chapter, the battle that Code that had against Sasuke and Boruto happened 1 year into the 3-year time skip, which means that Sasuke has been in a tree for 2 years. And thus the logical thing to do here is ask the question, why now, Boruto? See, really at any point Boruto could have returned to Konoha and told Sarada that, hey, Papa's got some wood. But now, 2 years after Sasuke being absorbed into a tree, Boruto decides it's time. And my best guess for why Boruto decided that now was the time to tell Sarada about Sasuke is because Boruto has been resolute in the cause of saving Sasuke for the last 2 years, but hasn't necessarily found a way to do so. However, upon the manifestation of Hidari, Sasuke's Shinju, Boruto has not only realized that Hidari may at one point become an actual problem for Sarada, who would probably look at Hidari and be like, oh, that looks a lot like my dad for some weird reason, but also Boruto realized that the defeating of Hidari could lead to the possible freedom of Sasuke. And thus, in order to make sure that Sarada was as prepared as possible for the oncoming Hidari fight, and also because Boruto now sees the light at the end of the tunnel for the freedom of Sasuke, I guess now is as good a time as any to tell Sarada about her dad. However, while Boruto is telling Sarada about Sasuke, Kawaki realizes that Boruto is in Konoha, and he tells this to Mitsuki. We then cut to Mitsuki, who's talking to Shikamaru, who he is telling that Kawaki has identified that Boruto is in Konoha. Now, the reason that only Kawaki was able to identify that Boruto is within the confines of Konoha is because Boruto, as an Otsutsuki, has the ability to erase his chakra signature, which means that standard sensory type ninjas and the sensory bubble around Konoha can't pick him up. But Kawaki, as a fellow Karma Mark wielder and a fellow Otsutsuki, is able to feel his presence. On top of this, Mitsuki is also telling Shikamaru to get Ada to pinpoint Boruto's location, because erasing your chakra signature does not mean that Ada doesn't know where you are. But all of this is kind of odd. I mean, technically, Kawaki should be able to roughly triangulate where Boruto is. And while Mitsuki openly admits that Kawaki's not good at triangulating Boruto's location, he should be able to get them in a general proximity. But it's then revealed that the reason that Kawaki isn't the one doing the triangulating is because Mitsuki has knocked him out. Now I know, it's a surprise feat, Nick. It's not all that impressive. It's not nearly as impressive if Mitsuki was able to knock out Kawaki in a one-on-one fight. Kawaki was most likely preoccupied trying to triangulate Boruto's location, and Mitsuki took advantage of that moment. And you're right, that is probably what happened. But what we do know for certain is that Kawaki fell to the ground with a snake bite in his neck and was out cold. And therefore, even though it was a surprise feat, Mitsuki has a move that is strong enough to knock out Kawaki in one hit. And while I know, once again, it's a surprise feat, that means that if Mitsuki and Kawaki were to ever fight, if Mitsuki was able to land this one snake bite, that's GG's. Because the second that Kawaki passes out, you can just stabby. But all this begs the question, why? Why would Mitsuki betray Kawaki, his son? But even beyond a personal level, why would Mitsuki, who's been assigned to survey Kawaki, knock Kawaki out at the first sign of Boruto entering the village? Well, really, when you look at it, there's two possible reasons. The first possible reason is a more personal reason for Mitsuki, and that is that Mitsuki wants to protect Kawaki from Boruto. As so far as Mitsuki knows, Boruto has already hurt Kawaki horribly. And since Boruto had the ability to kill Naruto, he would stand a legitimate threat to Kawaki. And therefore Mitsuki, possibly picking up on some of Kawaki's character traits, decided it would be best to hide away the person that he loved so other more powerful people wouldn't be able to hurt them. The second part to this theory is that Mitsuki just wants personal revenge against Boruto, as Mitsuki was infuriated by the fact that Boruto took somebody so important from his son. And yes, I'm talking about the great fireball in the sky, not his child. That's not my fault, that's English's fault. And the second possible reason that Mitsuki would do this is because he was instructed to, directly by Shikamaru, who's wary of Kawaki in the first place. And therefore, because Shikamaru was wary of the fact that his memories might have been altered, doesn't want to endanger Boruto by allowing Kawaki to get close to him. And it's looking like that second theory might be correct, but there's also a fair amount of that first theory that's being proven to be true. Because as soon as Mitsuki hangs up the mind telephone with Shikamaru, Shikamaru calls up Boruto through Ino and the mind transmission jutsu. And Shikamaru tells Boruto that he needs to trust him, and that somebody is on the way to attack him. And that someone is very obviously Mitsuki. But Shikamaru does something rather odd here from a narrative perspective during this call. See, because one of the first pieces of information relayed to us in this chapter is the fact that Shikamaru only wanted to be the Hokage for 3 years. And he so badly didn't want to be the Hokage that he didn't even have his face added to the stone wall. However, when Boruto goes, "Oh, you're the 8th Hokage," Shikamaru corrects him and goes, "I'm kind of a more temporary fill-in." Once again, conferring to us, the reader, the same piece of information given to us in the beginning of the chapter. And if being told that information once is a hint, being told twice is is basically an overt admission. An overt admission that Shikamaru never stepped into the role of Hokage because he knew one day that seat would be refilled by the person who everybody assumed to be gone. And whether or not he knew that consciously or subconsciously, we can't really say. But doubling down on the same piece of information that Shikamaru isn't the real Hokage and is simply a fill-in, all but guarantees that he had some kind of knowledge that Naruto isn't fully gone. But Boruto, after even being warned that Mitsuki is on his way, still looks up and finds snakes tangled around him. And what does Boruto do to get out of the situation? Well, you know exactly what you would think he would do. He pelvis thrusts so hard, his sword shoots out of its scabbard. At which point, he brings his hands together and uses Flying Thunder God to jump to his sword. Hey, Boruto, what do you mean when you say you're not as skillful as your grandfather? That's literally how he used it. I mean, minus the pelvis thrust. That was more for Kushina. And then as we cut to Boruto escaping away from these snakes, we get to see for the first time Mitsuki's Snake Sage mode post-time skip. And Mitsuki is poised to go all out, to even go so far as to tell Sarada to step out of the way because he doesn't want her to get hurt. Which is something that happens a couple times this chapter, which I'm not super stoked on because, she should be strong enough to battle against either of these two. But she's not. And she'll probably never be. And the Kishimoto cycle continues. And after telling Sarada to step out of the way, Mitsuki then attacks with his chakra snakes. And at this moment, Boruto does something real interesting. See, in order to counter the onslaught of snakes coming his way, Boruto activates Lightning Release Purple Lightning, which Boruto channels into his sword to slice through all the snakes. Now, for those of you who don't have the jutsus of every character in the Naruto universe memorized, Purple Lightning is a jutsu created by Kakashi in response to him losing his Sharingan in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, because as we all know, a Sharingan is required for the usage of Chidori. Now, Kakashi got the idea for Purple Lightning from Madara, and in his first light novel, which describes his story of him becoming the 6th Hokage, we get to see Kakashi create this jutsu. But so far as we know, he's the only person who knows Purple Lightning. And that's really, when it boils down to it, the only person who should be able to teach Boruto Purple Lightning is Kakashi. Now, it is also a possibility that Kashin Koji or Sasuke could teach Boruto Purple Lightning, but we've never seen them use it. So who taught Boruto Purple Lightning? Well, that's gonna be the next video on this page. It deserves its own video. And if you've seen any of my Boruto chapter reviews, you'll know that's how we do this. So make sure you follow, because it'll be up in like 2 days. And right after Boruto slices through all the snakes that Mitsuki has summoned, Mitsuki shoots a bunch of snakes out of the ground, which launches Boruto into the air. Well, Boruto jumps to avoid the snakes, so he's in the air. And just as Boruto is about to slice all of the snakes that Mitsuki has summoned, he sees Sarada, the gentle, wilting, weak little flower. And he realizes in that moment, if he goes all out in this battle against Mitsuki, that he might hurt Sarada. Doesn't realize that he'll hurt Sumire, who's standing right next to Sarada. He just hyperfixates on Sarada and goes, oh, can't hurt her. So Boruto x Sumire is deader than the Cowboys and the Eagles combined. Boruto then promises Sarada that he's gonna save everybody who's turned into a tree and then flies away like a legitimate bullet bill. And while he's flying away, he continues his conversation with Shikamaru, telling Shikamaru that he should have told Mitsuki to stand down. And it's at this point that Shikamaru reveals that he's on Boruto's side, but that he, as the Hokage, can't help Boruto publicly, because Boruto's fate is now kind of out of his hands, as the entire Land of Fire, including the Daimyo, want him dead. And it's at this point that Shikamaru drops the dagger. Aren't you Boruto Uzumaki? That is to say that Shikamaru is asking Boruto if he is the son of Naruto, revealing that once and for all, I was correct. And Shikamaru is aware that he's been brainwashed, and he's been holding out for the return of Naruto and Boruto for the last 3 years. But at the same time, technically I wasn't right, because pretty much all but immediately after saying, aren't you Boruto Uzumaki, Shikamaru freely admits to Boruto that he had no suspicions about Boruto and Kawaki's roles on Earth until he observed Amado making the acknowledgement that his memories have been altered. And so most people in reading this would go, oh, Shikamaru had no idea that his memories had been altered until he snooped on Amado. And while it might technically be more accurate, what I'm saying is that Shikamaru always had a lingering suspicion that his memories were altered. And the hint for that was laid in chapter 79 when Ada used her omnipotence. And Shikamaru was one of only 2 people to show any distrust in these newfound memories. And therefore, because of this sneaking suspicion, Shikamaru decides to not fully take the Hokage role, and to double his surveillance on people like Amado and Ada and Kawaki, which led him to the eventual conclusion through Amado's revelation that his memories had been altered. But Shikamaru isn't quite done flexing his intelligence yet, because Shikamaru, with the power of Amado's revelation, is able to make a connection that even Amado can't make. See, because while Amado is aware that his memories have been altered, he's not aware by who, why, or how. However, as soon as an idea of altered memories entered into Shikamaru's brain, he figured it out, and he tells Boruto that by switching his and Kawaki's roles in his brain, everything begins to make sense. That is to say that anything that seemed weird in the last 3 years now no longer seems weird, as he understands that Boruto and Kawaki's roles were switched by genjutsu. But before they can make it any further into the conversation, it's revealed that Mitsuki has been keeping up with Boruto by putting a literal snake in his pants, and Mitsuki is now flying in to attack Boruto. However, Boruto doesn't seem all that worried about it, as he tells Shikamaru that their conversation is going to have to wait because he has to deal with some minor business, saying that the battle against Mitsuki is simply just going to be a little rough, displaying the fact that Boruto has a fair amount of confidence that he is well stronger than Mitsuki, which kind of makes sense. See, because here's the thing. I know everybody's gonna say, oh, Mitsuki's feat on Kawaki is a surprise feat. And well, yes, it 100% is. Mitsuki also surprise attacked Boruto, and Boruto did not get bitten by the snake, proving that Boruto is either faster, more intelligent, or stronger than Kawaki, who should have had just as much time to react to this attack as Boruto. And sure, you can say that Boruto got a warning because Shikamaru said somebody's coming, but there's a big difference between somebody's coming and Mitsuki's about to wrap a snake around your body. And thus, if Boruto is able to react to Mitsuki's surprise attacks, it's fair to assume he's going to be able to react to Mitsuki's regular attacks. So it shouldn't be anything more than a little rough. But we'll have to see, because that's where chapter 6 ends, which means you and me have to wait an entire another month until we get to see how the fight between Boruto and Mitsuki truly shakes out. But what did you guys think of the chapter? Do you have any theories about what was shown in the chapter? Who do you think taught Boruto Purple Lightning? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go to sleep.